So the Preacher and the Hat guys went on an adventure last week, and we're going to tell you all about it. But first, Chris, cue up that intro.
10 seconds till Preacher in the Hat. 5 seconds till Preacher in the Hat. You are now experiencing Preacher in the Hat.
Welcome back to another episode of Preacher in the Hat. My name is Eric, and if you're watching on video, yes, I said my name is Eric. I know I'm sitting in Derek's spot tonight. That is because this is our first Derekless episode, thanks to a sick kiddo at the house that happened very last minute, right before we were recording. So our blessings and prayers to Emmy, who is at home recovering and needed Mama and Dada to help her out this evening as we're recording. But I still got Dad with me, Steve across from me.
Yep.
And behind the cameras is our producer, Chris. And he is also on camera tonight. First
Wow.
time ever.
Yes,
So
sir, baby.
If you are just listening, if you are only listening, congratulations. You don't have to watch Chris on camera.
Well, there you go.
I guess you're still winning. But Chris, you're gonna have to help us out here because I am holding a bag of popcorn.
As am I.
For those of you who aren't watching, what do I do here? Oh, I know. This is like a mix of of all of the popcorns that come in those Christmas those Christmas tins. You know what I'm talking about? Of popcorn. And
Yeah.
This is like a mixture of all those. We are going to do our very, very and absolute best to not eat this on microphone because you guys will cut this off so quick if you hear us chewing. But Chris,
Never stopped us before.
help us out here. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this is, I guess I got introduced to this maybe a couple years ago, and my life has never been the same. It's
You had never had this before?
No, I mean, not this brand. This is special. I mean, it's called Garrett Popcorn, and it's out of Chicago.
Garrett.
Garrett just spells like it sounds, Garrett, and it's just really famous, and it's just a gorgeous blend. And this is called the Chicago blend. It's the cheddar cheese.
Okay, the cheese one is underrated. So I judged it prematurely
Sure.
before eating.
Sure.
Obviously,
Very human thing to do.
by just visuals, and was like, oh great. And this is not Christmas tin popcorn.
Not at all.
This is better than that. So you have cleared hurdle 1. I'm a little more scared. Is the other one caramel?
Oh yes.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of it. So you get to chase them. You know what I mean? Like you can do
Too much cheese, so now it's time for caramel.
Yeah,
No,
Too
I'm
much
chasing
so now it's time
caramel
for
with
cheese.
caramel. That's what I do. I chase caramel with caramel. That's all I'm interested in.
Yeah, I got you.
No. See, the caramel one's good, but it's just like I remember as a kid. I'm sorry to reference that Christmas tin popcorn. It's so sticky.
Yeah, but you got to chase it, right?
No, I know. But that one just has never worked for me ever since I was a little kid. And I know everyone listening or watching is like, holy smokes, can you guys please get done eating popcorn?
There you go.
But there you go.
Will do.
How does that compare to the absolutely massive bucket of popcorn you were eating out of last Tuesday night, which was related to our Preacher in the Hat group adventure?
That's right.
You can't compare apples to oranges. Two completely. different
You're
products.
definitely right about that. That is apples to oranges. This popcorn right here has absolutely nothing to do with movie theater popcorn. It's not the same food. So So last
You and I may follow the adage, do not chew popcorn in there, but I'm got an idea. Mr. Producer is going to be chewing popcorn the rest
I think
of the
he's
time.
eating pork rinds on a hot mic on the show.
I have. I remember such, yes.
So last Tuesday night, and for those of you who don't know or are new to the show or don't remember us saying this, Tuesday night is when Preacher in the Hat things happen. So we were, instead of recording a new episode last week, we went and saw a movie. Prior to that, we went to a Mexican restaurant where Chris ordered 2 large quesos, which these were the big. One of them was like the biggest queso I've ever seen served at a Mexican restaurant. And
Large
he got
it
2
was.
of them. And they it was so big that they bring out extra bowls.
Well, it was like a vat.
For you to
vat of
yes.
queso, yeah.
And dude, that later that night and the following morning, my stomach hurt from how much cheese I had ingested.
Oh, really? Oh.
Glory.
Oh,
I ate a pretty good amount. My stomach didn't hurt,
but
though.
it was incredible cheese. It was
It was.
incredible queso. Anyways, that is like nowhere near the point. But we went there. So we went to a Mexican restaurant before and we went to see.
And we took some people with us.
We did take some people with us.
It was a total of 8 of us.
We each we doubled our size for that evening. But we went and saw a movie called The Forge, which by the time you're hearing this is no longer in theaters. But is a faith-based film by the Chris. Correct me if I'm wrong because you're going to know this stuff. That was done by the Kendrick. It's Kendrick brothers, right? Okay,
Very
done
good,
by the
very
Kendrick
good.
brothers. I remember the only other movie I have to admit the only other movie of theirs that I remember was Courageous, which was an excellent film.
They also did
itself.
Facing the Giants, right, Chris?
Okay. All right. Yep. I should have known that one, but yeah, Courageous was the only one I remembered.
In fact, one of the guys that was with us said that he came to faith in Christ as a result of watching the Facing the Giants movie.
Okay. Cool.
That was Bill.
And
Billy Ray Smith Jr.
and also correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, but the Kendrick brothers did quite a bit of good work in the way of, how do I say this, maybe changing the narrative around Christian filmmaking years back. Were they a big part of that, or
Yeah, definitely think so.
okay, so that's my thoughts on it. I was just wondering what you thought. So for those of you who don't know, Chris has worked with filmmakers and stuff, and so he knows some of these guys who have made some of the films. How would you say, try to quantify in some kind of way, Chris, how much Christian filmmaking has improved in both let's just say quality overall in the last 2 decades, since 2 decades ago, since 2004.
Yeah, well, I think
What changed?
budgets got bigger, number one. I think they could always tell stories, but I think it's hard to compare independent films, like independent Christian films, with big budget films because you're comparing apples to oranges, right? So I think
As far as production
as
quality.
far as production, yeah. So I mean,
Well, you're dealing with less seasoned actors. You're dealing with maybe not as good equipment, not as good as sets. Whatever.
so if you have ample budget, then you've got money to put in all of those different factions of what it takes to make a movie great, whether it be lighting, cast, good actors cost,
Yeah.
So, absolutely. They've taken huge steps. It's incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so so this movie, like I said, by the time you're listening to this, it's out of theaters. We can almost guarantee that. I actually had not even. I'm so behind on movies in general. Ever since I had kids, we just Michaela and I hardly ever go to the movies anymore.
Right.
So I'd never even heard of this movie until you guys started talking about it. And when I say you guys, I'm literally looking at my dad, Steve, and Chris here, who had both seen it before we took the group
That's right.
out.
And Steve, I think you saw it before I saw
He
it.
did.
I did.
And even brought it to my attention.
I did. My wife and I saw it a few weeks ago, probably, let's see, after I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago at least.
So who wants to give a quick rundown? Give us the 30-second elevator speech on the Forge.
Chris.
I mean, it's just it's a coming of age story of a young man who just sort of doesn't have any direction in life, fresh out of high school. A mother who's very frustrated, loves her son, but can see that he's definitely struggling and doesn't have a whole lot of direction, and really is at wit's end. I think the father is not in the picture, and then we just see a group of men come into his life and raise him up. I mean, I guess that's probably the best way to say that, wouldn't you, Steve?
Yeah, I think if I were to whittle it down even further, I would say the basis, and this is as high level as it gets, it's about a kid without a dad and the guy who stepped up.
Well, how about
I mean, it's not just that simple, but I mean that's
how about going from no father to many fathers? A young man who went from no father to many fathers. No father, not in a sense of biologically, but in a sense of relationally. So he went from no father to many fathers, including his Father in heaven. So it is a story that talks about that journey of moving from no father to many fathers, or brothers.
All right, so in 2024 then, why is a movie about fatherlessness and moving beyond fatherlessness, why is that an important movie topic or an important movie narrative in 2024?
You know what's interesting in 2024, it's more talked about, but if you will go back all the way back to some of the stuff Will Smith did about fatherhood, there is this theme of fathers, no fathers, absent fathers in so many secular and Christian movies these days. It amazed me, and I was particularly sensitive to it because many years ago, 24 years ago, we started at UAB to develop a program that would connect with fathers who were learning to be fathers with their children. They were absent fathers and so forth. I also had experienced it many years in prison where 70% of the violent criminals in prison grew up without a father. So I have seen what fatherlessness can do up, and there's much research out there about fatherlessness. So it's been a theme that's not just been in the Christian genre, but also in other ones about fatherlessness and about reconciliation with fathers and so forth. And there's some really good movies that I've seen. It amazed me sometimes. I'd go to these movies not even knowing that there was that theme underlying, and then here it comes. And but anyhow,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned Will Smith. Yeah, going way back.
Yeah,
all the way.
What was the name of that movie? I forget.
Well, it was the TV show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for one.
I was thinking all the way back there, and where everybody remembers Uncle Phil, and that was
but the one he played
his father stand-in
about the homeless guy who became a businessman. And how he connected with his father. What was the name of that movie?
Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah, Pursuit of Happiness. It really is a pursuit of happiness from a faith-based perspective in some respects. In other words, except that Pursuit of Happiness was from the perspective of the father, whereas this was from the perspective of the son. But in both cases, there was that sense of fatherlessness. So it's a theme that's out there. In secular research, there's a huge theme. The National Fatherhood Initiative, for example, has a book called Fatherhood Statistics and so forth that talk about all of the different variables, and the one constant in so many of the kind of problems that we have today is without fathers. So the church has finally come around to understanding how important it is to connect with fathers, to connect with young sons who don't have fathers, young men who don't have fathers. And I think, so in 2024, we're kind of coming around. Ron Burt, who's been on our podcast before with us.
Shout out Ron Burt.
Yep. And he does I call him the fatherhood guru, because not only his own story of fatherlessness growing up, but also of his intense work at UAB. He and I working together, and some other people along with us. At one time, we had 200 fathers meeting in fatherhood groups across this city when we were working at UAB. Every week, 200 fathers were meeting with individual men, many of them pastors, and were touching that very point. One of the things we talked about is, what was your life like? And many of the people we were working with who were criminal justice involved and substance abuse involved were people who had come from fatherless backgrounds. And so it is such a real thing. And I think to some degree the church is, there's been a lot of talk about that church is a patriarchal sort of thing. What we found is in surveys show that in most typical congregations in America today, 61% of the people attending church are female and 39% are male. So the idea that church is for women and children is a long-standing thing that has happened for many, many years, particularly in rural areas and a lot of cities too, is that was the case. So why are we looking at this now? Is because it is a pertinent at the top of on the top of the pinhead problem that I think people are becoming more aware of.
And so in this movie, and we told you the film is called the Forge. What the Forge actually is this is what they named this group of guys who are focused on who this one man started discipling, and he brought him in, and he discipled another and brought him in, and then these guys start discipling kids or young adults or other men, whatever,
right.
and bring them all in, and they create this group of this basically this discipleship group, and that's what's called the Forge. And so the main character gets almost kind of starts getting discipled without even knowing it. It's one of those things where he doesn't even realize what's happening,
because it's done relationally, and its strategy is multiplication, not addition. I disciple you, you disciple another, more multiplication sort of thing. So let's back up for just a minute. How many children, Chris, do you think go to bed in America at night without their father or a father in the home? You want to give a guess of just the number? Anybody? Eric?
You asked Chris.
50%.
50%? 24 million children go to bed every night without the father in the home. Yeah. 24 million. Now, that I'm not sure how many children there are, but that's a lot. That's a lot of folks.
He gave a percent. You were asking for a number, and he gave a percentage. I don't know
that's
why
right.
That cracked
That's
me
right.
up.
Yeah.
Either way, it's terribly sad.
It is. It's very sad.
Yeah.
But it also
For sure.
highlights what we're talking about in terms of what the issue is. And the issue is those children are going to bed without a father in the home. So, this story is a story that resonates with many people. Now, if you grew up in a home where your father was intact and was there and emotionally engaged and so forth, it may not really connect with you. But
so I was more connected to, because it was a good story overall, but I was more invested and connected to his faith, the main character's faith journey. So and becoming a Christian, and connected more with that, and like some of the conversations he had with God, and in the film was kind of more what drew me in, because I grew up with a present dad. That doesn't mean I like I said, I was totally I loved that theme, but it was some different stuff that really stuck with me. By the way, Chris, one thing that I was impressed with that movie is the prayers that were actually said in the movie. So there's one particular scene where he's this kid he's walking around his bedroom praying. And
Intensely.
and I can't imagine, because I have heard a lot of scripted prayers in a lot of movies, and it never sounds like you're thinking. It's like it never really draws you in to feeling like this is a prayer that's actually happening. And when he's praying in his room, it feels like an actual, like a real prayer that's being said, like by someone who's given 100%. So I was incredibly impressed with how they put that together, because to me, that's something that can end up, like if you ever hear like preaching in movies, or whatever it is, it's just like, it's sometimes it can be just like absolutely brutal. I was incredibly impressed with.
Do you want me to tell you how that happened?
You know how that happened?
I know how that happened.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Two things. One, great acting.
Yeah.
Two, Stephen and Alex, who produced that movie, bathe their movies in prayer. And when they write, I really believe they open their hearts up to the Holy Spirit. And when you watch that movie, I mean, there's so much of it that, they did not shy away from. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you've seen movies where they want to make a point or whatever, and sometimes what gets lost in that is that thing you were just saying, right?
How about this? It was raw, not refined.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about it. It was raw, not refined.
It's like, yeah, and just to be able to script that is incredible to me.
Well, not to give too much away, because I hope the audience wants to see it and will go see it and take people with them. But do you remember the scene where he sees his father and he kind of falls apart?
Yeah.
And then the main Joshua takes him back and has a conversation with him. And he tells him, "Hey, I know how you feel."
Right.
And in those moments, he's fighting this thing between being obedient to what he's supposed to do and the way he feels. And they don't get away from that. I know they have to package it in a 2-hour movie. I get that. But they did not get away from that and show the hurt, even in the room. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. But also it gave it credibility, because that's real life.
Right.
That's real life. That's not acting. That's not just acting. That's real life. And so they were able to portray real life, whether it was scripted or not. They were able to portray real life and the real agony and pain. Now it's interesting, Eric. I want to go back to what you said about you being drawn in with his relationship with God and spiritually. If you'll notice, though, don't miss this point, and that is the mother and the females were not able to bring him to that point, but the men were. His relationship with his boss, Joshua, was able to bring him to a point where he was even willing to, because you see early in the movie when his mother approached him about this, he's like, "Whatever, Mom." But when this guy came to him, so the key point about even that part is very difficult. And she said it, the mother said it in there. She said, "I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to be a father to him."
Yes, that was good.
That was one of the best lines in the whole thing, because there is a thing out here that says, well, if you don't have a daddy, somebody else can do it. A woman can do it. Now, I know there are great single moms who have done terrific jobs with men, and men like Dr. Ben Carson and some other men, they say, "Well, I grew up," they'll say, I did okay. But I'm telling you, there were probably other men in their life who at some point in time. So I think a strong point in this message that even in that relationship with God, it was men leading men to their God, not just women leading men to God. Now, their prayers, the prayers of the women were important. The comfort, the love, the encouragement, the challenge that the mom did was fantastic. But ultimately, it was that connection with a man that even gave him the willingness to face his need for a relationship with God. And that is such an important piece that I have seen and that we see right now in terms of helping other men become kingdom men. And in a minute, I'll tell you a little bit of something that we're doing with among a fellowship of churches and some men, where we're doing something called Kingdom Men Rising, where we're actually envisioning contacting and working with other men to help that help it happen like it happened in the Forge.
I think one of the things, Derek, Eric, you were talking about, like the part you were focused on,
Yes,
the most. For me, it was like, because this kid had a dad that left,
Right.
yes,
and think about how many of us that had dads that were present but weren't present. You know what I mean? Like they were there, but they
yeah,
weren't.
right,
They probably weren't checked off on a percentage of dads who left, but maybe struggled with intimacy.
weren't emotionally engaged,
And so
relationally.
I'm not a big Reba McEntire fan, but she has this incredible song called "The Greatest Man I Never Knew."
Huh.
And it talks about his dad, and the song goes, "The greatest man I never knew lived just down the hall. He was in his paper. He was doing all this stuff. He never told me he loved me. I guess he thought I always knew." And
Yeah.
it just, I mean, even Tina, my wife, who's a counselor, years and years later, grown men that are dealing with things that stem from,
Yes.
and of course you live it. I mean,
I do.
Everything you do is,
Yeah.
you know, that at the central. So for me, it was about, we have an older father, a medium age father, and a young father.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it was like, what can we do? Like, what did I do wrong, and what can I do now?
Yeah.
With
Right.
adult children, you've got little ones.
Oh yeah.
And it just kept putting in my mind about, man.
What's really cool is the phrase this, and we use this all the time, Chris. Whether it's older guys, middle-aged guys, younger fathers, we say it's never too late. It's never too late. I've seen grown men in their 60s and 70s, whose fathers have died many years ago, and saying, "I just wish one time I would have heard him say, 'I love you.'" Just one time I would have heard him say, "I love you." And they don't say it as victims. They just say it as there's a missing piece there.
Are you trying to make me cry? Right
I'm not trying to make you anything.
Whoa.
I'm just telling you a story.
Are we really reversing that role tonight? And that he okay. We've got a camera on you for the first time.
yeah, I know.
We can get a nice tear shot.
I'm telling you, bro, that movie like rocked me.
Yeah.
And what's crazy was, like, it was so packed with truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they didn't shy away from any of it. You know what I mean? Like,
They didn't.
and the truth of the situation, not like
Yeah.
just kind of, they didn't beat around the bush about it.
Derek and I was sitting next to Derek during this movie, and there was a group of people sitting in the row in front of us, and when when he said the line, what was the line? Oh yeah, be a fountain, not a drain.
Yeah.
And the guy in front of us, I was like, just in like a small, just kind of like simple, but like he wasn't yelling or anything, but you just hear, "Come on, somebody," from the guy in front of us.
Listen to this right here. Another survey found if a child is the first person in a household to become a Christian, there is a 3.5% probability everyone else in the household will follow. If the mother is the first to become a Christian, there is a 17% probability everyone else in the household will follow. However, when the father is first, there is a 93% probability everyone else in the household will follow.
What?
From 3.5% with the child. It's a lot like I've heard ministry after ministry say, well, let's reach the children, then we're going to reach the parents. Statistics bear out that it doesn't work that way normally. Now, I'm not saying it's not valuable to that child. I'm not saying it's not valuable at all. I'm just saying when they keep talking about, well, if we reach the mom and the children, maybe we'll reach the daddies. No, And here's the thing about the men. Did you notice this in the movie? You've got to, I'm preaching now. You've got to go after the men. You have to go after the men. You cannot wait for them to come to you. And Joshua did not wait for that dude to come to him.
It is the preacher in the hat.
It is the preacher in the hat. You've got to go after the men. And that movie was loud like that. It was loud about that. You've got to go where they are. That's why I love this movie, is that it's a businessman that was doing this, not a preacher.
Yeah. I love the one part where he went and got a job, and Priscilla Shire, who plays his mother, was so tickled. Like, she got a job, and then the look that she gave him when he's like, she said, "Do you have any training?" He said, "Well, I mean, he wants to meet with me a couple times a week." And she said,
Oh, that's right.
She knew what was happening.
That's right. She did.
Yes.
And when he started mentoring that guy, he said, "I hire you, but I want to meet with you." That is so powerful because he knew he had to go after him. He could not just give him a job. And this idea of we just help men give a job and then somehow they'll come to faith in Christ, you have to go after them. You have to develop a relationship with them, get to know them, and that is how God begins to do his work in many men. That has been my experience with the hundreds and thousands of men I work with, both in prison, outside of prison, in church, in wealthy settings, and let me finish with this. So this Sunday, a friend of mine that I knew at another ministry I worked at some years ago, George. And George, we got to have him on. I talked to you guys about it, and we'll see if we can have him come sometime and sit in with us. But George, 10 years ago when I met him, was in a very big crisis in his life. He was in a group where another guy named Harry and I did for about 6 or 7 years. And George was a part of that group. He came almost every Thursday night for probably 3 or 4 or 5 years. Learned about being a father, learned about God, learned about that kind of thing. Had not made a commitment personally at that point. But he texted me 2 weeks ago and he said, "Steve, I'm going to be baptized. I'm going to be baptized Sunday. And I would be honored if you would come." Now, I'm not the only man that's been involved in his life, but I was able to introduce him to a company of men, just like that movie. And so you see, that movie for me was not just a movie about what you could do, what you can do. I know it's true because I've lived it to some degree and in a different kind of setting, in a different kind of way. George is a businessman here in Birmingham. And there he was being baptized in front of his children, his 10-year-old son, who was just born when I first met George. And now George's 10-year-old son came up and gave me a hug. And there was his whole family, his wife and his children, some of them in college now and in high school. And there's George, and he's now a spiritual leader in his home along with his wife. It is a powerful story of how God can do it. But it began in a moment. While the Forge probably did it better than we did, the fact of being able to do that is so rewarding. And to go to that movie on Tuesday night with you guys and then on Sunday to sit and watch George being baptized was absolutely fantastic.
Hey, you were Forge before the Forge.
No, I don't know about that, but
They probably owe you some, like,
I don't know about
royalties.
that. I doubt it. But I have had the privilege of doing the same kind of thing, and I know how powerful it is.
Well, it's biblical,
It is.
and that's why it works.
The older men teach the younger men, and the older women teach the younger women. And when we go to that, we'll see men's lives change that maybe never thought that they would ever be interested or concerned about a relationship with Jesus. But it's powerful.
I can almost hear some background music playing right now.
Let's do it.
And some background, and and I just want to reiterate that kind of stuff is it's a big deal, and it's Chris, you mentioned that it's biblical, and that's because it 100% is. And if you're ever wondering if you should be serious about discipleship, you can ask yourself if Jesus was serious about discipleship, because that's what he spent his years of ministry doing, is discipling the 12. So, and this is so yeah, it's incredibly important, and it's something we of course, this group of people here, highly encourage you to check out The Forge. We enjoyed that movie. We seem to keep going on adventures, first concerts, now movie. Don't know what's next, but when we do it, and
Water park.
whatever, oh boy, we'll find a way to make an episode about that too.
And here is the theme that we carry with us. When I said that Jesus went after the men, he went out and said, "Come and follow me." What we can do is say, "Come, follow me as I follow Christ." That's biblical. Amen.
So for Steve and Chris behind the cameras, we missed you tonight, Derek. He should be back with us next time. I'm Eric, and this has been another episode of Preacher in the Hat. We will see you next time.